Hey, folks, Mark McCloskey and I here again today to talk it up, have a little fun, and hopefully share a little knowledge with everybody. My name is John Dady, Patriots United. Mark, what's going on today?
Well, we now have no debt ceiling. The grand result of all of our great rhino Republicans negotiating with the leftist Democrats is look at it this way: this was such a good bill that 31 Republican senators, 63% voted against it, 71 Republican congressmen voted against it, and two Democrats, Tlaib and Cory Bush, at least to my knowledge, voted against it because they didn't think it was socialist enough. But what it did was everybody on the media is calling it a new debt ceiling, but in fact, they eliminated the debt ceiling. They suspended the debt ceiling. There is now sky's the limit, and the government is now blank check to spend whatever it wants. And everything is full of just remarkable stuff that you just can't believe. For example, once again, all these bills are gigantic, but Section 263 is a pay-as-you-go provision, right, where you have to have actual money for your new programs. Section 265 says if the director of the Office of Management and Budget wants to, she can waive all those provisions. Right. And Shalanda yesterday came out and said, "I'm going to waive them."
She did. I saw her say it.
Yeah.
She will not do anything that impedes the Biden agenda.
That's right.
Yep.
Which is she said. And the Biden agenda is destroy the United States, bankrupt our economy, and create China as the world's most dominant power.
Yeah. I talked to Sam Graves' office. One of his guys answered the phone yesterday. So it's interesting. And I says, how did the congressman vote for it? He says he voted for it. Says why? Well, because it puts a limit on the cap. Because excuse me, are we reading the same piece of legislation? The debt ceiling is suspended until January 2025. He goes, no, it isn't. I go, seriously? Oh, and there's $2 trillion worth of cuts. I go, where? I said, first of all, there is no cap on it. Here you go.
Here's a statute right here. Here's a new statute, page 98 and 99. Okay.
All right.
You go Division D, increase in debt limit. Section 401, temporary extension of public debt limit. A, in general, Section 3101B of Title 31 United States Code shall not apply for the period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act and ending January 1, 2025. No debt limit until January 1, 2025. And, here's one of my favorite things. I forgot to mention this. On the provision in Section 265, where it talks about how the Shalanda can waive any requirement to actually have the money for these programs. Section 267, judicial review. No determination, finding, action, or omission under this title shall be subject to judicial review. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
They have written themselves an exception to the Constitution here.
That's right. This whole thing is, it's dangerous. And the weakness on our side, gosh damn it. This fear mongering that, if we don't do this, we're going to default on our debt. No, we were never going to default on the interest payments on our debt. We had $357 billion coming into the Treasury on the 15th of June, more than enough to handle everything for another month. Yeah. So there was this alarmism, which they could get away with because they know that the people, they don't know, they're not paying attention. They got them scared to death. See, I expect more from our leaders. I don't know why, because they keep disappointing me. But we were not going to default on our debt, folks. We have hundreds of billions of dollars coming in every single month. And if it got really bad, there's a priority payment plan, which would be you pay the interest on the debt first, so you don't default, and then everything else, just like any other household budget, you prioritize until you get another check coming in. And fear mongering just got to stop.
Go ahead, and everything that you hear on the television and radio about this by the traditional media is just outright lies. For example, Fox this morning was talking all about how it eliminates the IRS, $87 billion, right?
It didn't do that.
Didn't do that. And I'm trying to find the exact provision here, because I always like to read stuff instead of guessing stuff.
It reduced it by 1.4 billion.
1.385, I think, billion dollars.
Okay.
2%. 2%.
Yeah. They're still getting 87,000 new thugs.
Well, and you just look at it. I mean, once again, a debt reduction act, or a limit. So you just look at the first few pages. And by the way, there are hundreds, where there's 85 paragraphs, I think, which are titled "Rescission of Unobligated Funds." Well, John, you've read this. There's no rescission of unobligated funds, because every one of those paragraphs has an except for clause, right?
That's right.
And with a big dollar number behind it. But here's discretionary spending limits for discretionary category. Here's one. Under the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act, $886,349 in new budget authority. Next paragraph, $703,651 in new budget authority. Next paragraph, $895,212,000,000 in new budget authority. Next one, $710,688,000,000 in new budget authority. Then you get to the bottom lines, right? This is how we're going to save money, balance the budget. Additional spending limits for the purposes of Section 302A5, the Congressional Budget Impoundment Control Act of 1974. The following applicable fiscal years, the following discretionary spending limits shall apply. Fiscal year 2026, $1,621,000,000. Fiscal 27, $1,638,000,000. Fiscal 28, $1,654,000,000. Fiscal 29, $1,671,000,000. You notice those numbers keep getting bigger every year?
Yeah.
I mean,
this is going to cost us, I'm thinking, another 4 to 5 trillion is what this is going to cost us between now and the time, hopefully, this dementia patient's out of the White House.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any budgetary control, Mark. I mean, the Republicans are not going to use even their slim majority to exercise any budgetary control on appropriations that are coming up. I mean, if they couldn't stand pat on this, on what they originally intended to do, what's to make us think that they're going to act responsibly later this year?
Yeah, and then they passed the House passed the limit save and grow bill back in January, and the REINS Act to try to rein in some of the unauthorized, unconstitutional laws generated by bureaucratic entities for which there is no recourse. Both of those got dropped out of this.
Yes, they did. Like, they didn't even try to protect that. We were supposed to go back to budget pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
Not only did we not go back to budget pre-COVID, they have codified budget COVID.
Yeah.
By not cutting a thing. And then literally we gave a blank check. That's what we did. And this mental midget at Graves' office yesterday was arguing with me and saying, "Oh, it's not a blank check. It's not a blank check. There's not going to be any more money spent. We're cutting." I said, "Yeah, OMB director can override anything in this thing. It's already there. She already admitted to it. There is no cut. It's only going to be more debt added on to us." And I'm really pissed.
You got to be an elected official to somehow do your math, where a savings of $1.5 trillion over 10 years is a benefit when you spend $4 trillion more dollars to get there.
Yeah. Just when people hear these numbers batted around, like the 1.4 trillion, they don't listen, because it's often not said. It's over a period of years, like over 10 years. So that's what, $1.4 billion a year times 10. There's your trillion, $100 billion a year. So that's nothing. We have just basically $5 trillion coming into the Treasury this year, right? Biden has proposed a $7+ trillion budget, correct? There's $2 trillion. We're down right there.
Yeah.
Does anybody think that the Republicans are going to oppose that? No. Because the Democrats.
I was going to say, what the heck is the point of passing bills that go out 10 years when every 2 years you get a new Congress, and they're going to change it anyway? And by the way, none of these people have ever had any backbone. And by the way, when we elect Donald Trump, who really wants to do something, what does he get? Nothing but blowback from his own party.
Yep, he did, because so many people in his own party believe that BS about Russian collusion.
Yeah.
It's like,
As I always said when I was on the campaign trail, we were told that if we got a Republican House, we get rid of Obamacare. If we got a Republican Senate, we get rid of Obamacare. If we got a Republican House and Senate and a Republican president, we get rid of Obamacare. Well,
yeah,
did we get rid of Obamacare?
No, I developed a very good plan, because I just don't complain. I actually work on fixing problems. That's what we're supposed to do, right? And I ran it by a lot of people, and they just loved it because it solves the problem. It doesn't make anything a government entity or a demand or anything. It solves the problem. And was told repeatedly, it'll never go anywhere because it does just that. It fixes the problem. Our elected officials, they don't want to solve anything. They just want to make things worse. It keep themselves in power. Really, at the expense of all of us. This damn budget deal is a deal breaker for this country, fiscally speaking. I don't know any other way to say it.
And I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts. I was listening to Mike Lee talk about it on the Senate floor yesterday.
Yeah.
And he was talking about people lacking courage to do more. I don't believe it's a lack of courage. I believe it's a design and a plan. I believe that all these folks, there may be some people in Congress so stupid that they don't know what they're doing, but I believe that they all know what they're doing. I believe that they know what they're intentionally doing is destroying the economy, because they all think, and just like people in Russia thought under Stalin that if I do what I'm told and I support the dictator, when they have absolute power, then I will have absolute power too. I will be carried under the wings of this tyranny, and I'll be a super person, and I'll be protected from everything until they got their heads cut off, right? Until they stood up against the wall and got machine gunned. And that's why all these people are in lockstep, because they believe it's inevitable that there's going to be this one party universal socialist government for the world, and they want to be part of it. They don't want to be crushed under it, and they don't want to end up in some gulag and a dungeon.
You're right about that, but I'm one of the guys who wants to stop it, and we can stop it. But we're running out of time. That hourglass is getting really low on sand.
Yeah.
Speaking of sandbags, let's talk about sandbags. Oh, you like that segue?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, very smooth, very smooth.
Yeah, the one that Biden tripped over yesterday at the Air Force Academy when he was giving a speech. It's like, really? I mean, I don't know if everybody's seen it yet, but he literally fell in a heap.
Yeah, like a tree falling in the forest.
It was horrible. I mean, I feel bad for the guy, but I feel worse for the country, because Biden falling is indicative of what he's doing to our country. He's taken our country down with him.
Yeah.
He's an embarrassment. He's a danger, not only to our country, but to the entire world. Look what all the negative things that is going on because of his weakness, ineptitude, and desire to appease the tyrants of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you think about, there's no better way that I can put it than it's just absolutely treasonous to keep giving Ukraine all of our military weaponry, all of our ammunition, all of our shells, all of our medium range, short range missiles at a time when we're facing a real adversary, so that if a shooting war comes into existence between, China and Taiwan, what are we going to do?
I don't know. The Pentagon's kind of getting worried actually on that, because we've sent so much of our equipment to Ukraine. It's not like you can replace that stuff overnight. Where everything else is, it'll take them at least 2 years to replace what we've already sent over there.
And you think about this little country, which is not a democracy, in Eastern Europe, which we have no reason to be involved in the first place.
Yep, no reason.
But I mean, what's the military budget? $800 billion. How much are we giving Ukraine? $135 billion?
Something like that right now, yeah. Because didn't Biden just authorize more money to be sent there yesterday?
Well, we're having a what he would describe as a budget crisis.
Yeah, and it's sent billions more over there. I'm like, yeah, I guess you can do that when you have a blank check.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And, the problem is, as the old cliche, there's no such thing as a free lunch, but you can't You can't constantly spend more than you make and not have adverse consequences. And
There's going to be huge. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
And our people don't see that, or they don't think there's anything they can do about it. Well, folks, there's everything you can do about it. Just like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, you have your own damn ruby red slippers to take care of the problem. And it's called the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. I suggest you all start enforcing those things on your bosses, the elected officials, while you still can. Because that's go ahead.
I was going to say the Declaration of Independence says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men,
That's right.
deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And every bad thing that's happening to us right now, from this psychosexual nonsense, this transgenderism, all this other stuff, everything that's being imposed on us, it's only happening because we're consenting to it. If we withdrew that consent to the governed, we could stop this right stinking now. The problem is everybody's fat, happy, addicted to sports and all the nonsensical stuff that the powers that be have used out there to neutralize the force of the people.
Keep us distracted and stupid.
Yeah,
dumb
exactly.
down.
Well, then you got these concepts right now, and I'm going to be talking about it on my radio program on Sunday. Okay. That now they want to have the world's most famous psychologist, some guy named Baumeister, wants to have all grading being equal. That he wants to impose grade equity. That you're going to have to look at the grades of black students and white students, and everybody's going to have the same grades. And so let's take a look at this. Let's say you're coming out of Baltimore, where 0% of high school graduates can read or write at grade level. They'll go to college. Let's say that their absolute ability to do coursework is the best guy coming out of that school system gets 25% of what the best guy coming out of a real school system gets. But if he happens to be black, then you're going to have to give him an A for 25% on the test. And then why would the guy who's working hard and actually getting an A on that test, why would he waste his time?
There's no
incentive. And then think about if you're a grad school admissions officer, if you're looking at medical school applicants or law school applicants, and everybody's got an A. How do you choose? How do you select your applicants? And then what happens when they get out? I mean, if you've got 0% of your high school graduates who can read or write English, and yet when you send those people to college, and then the professors are intimidated into giving them not just passing scores, but a score equivalent to people that actually can read and write, what the hell happens to our economy? What the hell happens to our culture?
It decimates everything. University of North Carolina Medical Center yesterday issued a statement. Thank God, at least they did this. Says they are no longer going to participate in DEI. Thank God for that, because it just promotes what you were just talking about. That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's about. You don't have to qualify. You don't have to know anything. You don't have to be competent. You just have to be somebody in the box that they check off.
Yeah.
That promotes incompetency, promotes danger to society. Imagine, do you want to have a doctor operating on you who was a DEI student? Yeah. I pretty much say no to that.
Or how about the guy flying your airplane?
That too. Yep. Yeah. Anything.
Or how about?
But they're doing this.
Yeah.
And our people, Mark, they don't know what is going on, and it puts every one of us at risk.
It does. It does, and not just every one of us. It puts our entire culture at risk.
Exactly.
It puts everything that the Western civilization has worked for 5,000 years on the hook, and it can all be lost overnight. I mean, how does it improve our lives to reduce or eliminate standards to where anybody can hold any position? And not being facetious, but I live in a city where we see what happens when the lowest common denominator takes over control, and that's a city of anarchy and violence.
That's right. And they want this for the whole country so they can move in with their communists. And I'm afraid they're going to succeed. If we don't take action now, we're going to lose. And I'm glad I'm older, but at the same time, I don't want this for anybody.
Yeah.
Anyone. I don't want this for the people of this country. And Mark, we have the ability to stop it. We have the authority to stop it, but we act like it's not happening. And if it does, it's not going to be as bad as what some of us tell them.
Yeah. Well, we have the ability to stop it only if they're fair elections. And if the elections continue to be rigged, and if the federal Department of Justice and the FBI continue to keep their thumb on the scale and prosecute and persecute people that believe in freedom and democracy, and benefit and keep out of jail the people that are actual crooks, then finding a solution that's a political solution becomes ever so much more difficult.
Yeah, well, you know how I feel about our elections. I don't know if we talked about this. There's a federal election law that states when federal elections are to be held and why.
Yeah.
Congress has control over federal elections according to the Constitution, and they can decide on how those are held. And they did that in 1845 and then again in 1872 after the Senate they were elected by citizens instead of by the state legislature, so that it was updated to include them. But these states that vote illegally, like your mail-in ballots, which basically have no chain of custody, right? Zero.
Mm-hmm.
And this early in-person voting crap, those illegal votes just enfranchises those of us in the states who vote legally.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
It's true.
Yeah.
And the more go ahead. I'm sorry.
Why aren't our really great political leaders, attorneys, or whatever, why aren't we in federal court suing those states who held their elections illegally in 2020 and 2022 and suing them in federal court for a violation of this law?
And you got to ask yourself this question. Why is it that Chuck Schumer can stand on the Supreme Court House steps and threaten Supreme Court justices? How is it that people can protest outside of Supreme Court justices' houses in violation of federal law and nobody gets arrested? And then you got to ask yourself, these people, even though they're justices of the Supreme Court, they're just human beings with families and kids and grandkids, and they worry about their safety. And they're now sitting in a world where their physical safety is threatened and no one will come to their aid.
Nope.
And so,
DOJ didn't do a damn thing about that.
And why did the Supreme Court not take up any of the election fraud claims that were raised after the 2020 election?
Why?
Yeah,
they were being intimidated, but I don't know. I like I said on my show yesterday I did with Bill. I said, I wish I could sit Mr. Trump down, President Trump, to say, here's your avenue here. Okay, you have to go into court and you have to enforce this one really simple federal election law. You must enforce this against these states who have illegal federal elections held in the past and are going to be held next year. Yeah. Their way of voting is not legal. If we don't stop them from voting illegally again, Trump can get 100 million votes, Mark.
Yeah.
It won't matter because whether it's Biden or another dementia patient on the left, you're going to get 104 million votes. There's literally.
It doesn't even make any difference if there's more votes cast than there are registered voters in the country or eligible voters.
See, that's just, this is what's going to happen. So I'm proactive. I'm aggressive. I see the problem. I see the solution. And the solution is we need to haul their asses into federal court like tomorrow and enforce these federal laws against them. What's the point in having laws? Okay. Yeah. If we're just going to, that's a suggestion. Well, no, it's actually a law for a very good reason. They changed it to 1 day. It's very interesting history. I don't know, Mark. It's just,
from our perspective, I've been a lawyer for 39 years now, I guess. My wife and I talk about this every day. She's been a lawyer for 38 years. There isn't any law anymore. You cannot predict whether or not the laws are going to be upheld. When you go to court these days, it's like Donald Trump in New York City, right? They do away with the statute of limitations so he can be charged with stuff that happened 30 years ago. It's just ridiculous.
And something that even didn't happen, actually.
Well, it didn't happen, but I mean, it's ridiculous. And then it's like this guy, as another example, the kid, Danny Masterson from the 70s show, right? He gets accused of raping some people 30 years ago, where there's no record of it, where there was no accusation of it. He's facing 30 years to life because you get charged with something which they've got no way of disproving because it happened a billion years ago. Mm-hmm. And yet you get convicted by a jury under these bogus circumstances. You have to go to prison just like it was a real crime, just like you really did it, just like you had a fair trial. And that's what's going to happen, in all these things come up against Donald Trump. He's going to be indicted in jurisdictions where no matter what he said or did, he will get convicted because his first name is Donald and his last name is Trump.
Yep. And that's exactly right.
Yeah. There's no justice. You cannot predict that the laws will be upheld.
Nope. And, we're supposed to have a jury of our peers, right, Mark? Well, when I'm a conservative, you're a conservative, Trump is a conservative, and we're in court for whatever reason in a liberal jurisdiction, we really don't have peers at that point in time. We have enemies.
That's right.
They're not our peers because they disagree with us even existing on the planet. So
vindictive avarice enemies.
What's that?
Vindictive avarice.
Enemies. Yes. So this idea that we can get a free and fair trial is basically non-existent anymore in so many jurisdictions because it just doesn't happen. So now what do? Do we say, okay, because this is blue territory and I'm a conservative and you said I did so, you're never going to get a fair trial. It's just not going to happen because their ideology, their insanity won't allow it. So,
and of course, the movement now is to pull the teeth from the judiciary anyway, to either stack the Supreme Court or limit their tenure or enforce all kinds of external controls, which of course would all be unconstitutional. But nobody cares about the Constitution these days anyway, because according to the left, the Constitution is just an outdated document full of suggestions which can be ignored because they no longer apply to this modern world.
Well, you're right. I still think our red states need to get together as one and enforce our state rights and sovereignty against the federal government.
Well, we've got 6 weeks of advanced voting here in the state of Missouri. I mean,
I don't like it.
Supposed to be a red state. I mean, we don't have an election day. We've got an election month and a half.
Yep.
And the longer
illegal.
The longer you extend the election, the more ways you have to vote, including mail-in balloting. At least we have, photo ID requirements in Missouri now. But, under the John Lewis voter rights bill, if that passes, where vote harvesting is legal everywhere, challenging voter results is illegal, where it's against the law to have voter ID. In the city of St. Louis, there are 10,000 abandoned properties owned by the city of St. Louis.
Each one of those will be voting there. Yep.
Yeah. Each one of those houses, if you Google them, will have multiple residents' names attached to them.
Oh, yeah. All those 15, 20 people of voting age, each one of them.
And guess who's going to harvest all those ballots, and guess what vote's going to be cast?
The Democrats, 4 Democrats.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, I've got to let you go.
You
I've got to go do my radio program, and I put it off for a day so that I can see the results of the slimy worms in the Senate. Just abandon their responsibility and abdicate.
They totally screwed us. Yeah. Just so bad. And in time, people going to realize it when it's just, anyway. Thank you, Mark, for your time as always.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the opportunity. And I hope there is something we can do. I mean, I'm going to be down in Branson at an organization for 2 days on Friday and Saturday next week with Doug Billings. And the first thing I ever ask my audience these days is how many of us think there's a political solution to this problem, and almost no hand goes up. And that is a problem.
That is a problem. That's right. All right,
on that cheerful note, I'll let you go.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye, guys.